Move on down to 2, which will be the approval of the agenda. 3, recognitions. 3.1, recognition of Victoria Orcutt, Fort Walton Beach High School, Florida's female Wendy's High School Heisman winner and recipient of the 2020 All Sports Association Female Scholastic Award, and that will be presented by the superintendent. And visitors, we have none at this time. Administrative personnel appointments, none. Public comment will be 6.1, and item 7 is committee and staff reports. And we have in-county travel 7.1 and out-of-county travel 7.2. And we'll move on down to the consent agenda. And school board members that are on the phone, any item that you would like to, ask a question or a comment, just let me know and we'll go there. We do have 2 staff members that will be available for comment, and that would be Eric Mitchell and Vince Wyndham. And I'm hoping everybody else did call ahead of time. I know I got several phone calls yesterday.
Mr. Bryant, if we could, for the record, just confirm the members that are here present by telephone today.
Yeah. Mr. McGinnis wants me just for the for public record. Mr. Destin and myself are present, and via telephone, Ms. Sabanchek, Dr. Kelly, and Dr. White. Okay, so 8.1 will be the approval. 8.2 will be approval of minutes of the student disciplinary hearings of April 9th, 2020, workshop meeting of April 9th, 2020, minutes of regular meeting of April 13th, 2020. 8.3, budget amendment number 7, fiscal year 2019-2020, presented by Ms. Scallon.
Chairman, if I may, Ms. Scallon, we spoke on the phone. Can you give us a really brief synopsis of if there are any major changes there?
Okay.
Pluses and minuses?
On the school staffing, the school staffing grid item.
No. I'm on 8.3.
This is a budget amendment number 7.
Oh, okay. I'm
yeah.
sorry. I was trying to find something.
Anticipation.
8.3, the budget amendment. You will see the item of significance is in capital outlay fund. You will see an increase of about $680,000. That is not new revenue. That was incorporated into the projected capital outlay plan that you adopted early on. This is just that our plan has been approved by Tallahassee, and so now we are actually making the allocation. So that is what that amount is. In the general fund, there's around $400,000 that's predominantly made up of Pell Grant allocation, and we allocate that as we receive those funds because we never know exactly how much we're going to get. So pretty much that's the main increases in the budget amendment this time.
And are there any significant changes on the other side of the ledger?
On the expenditures, not anything significant, no.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
School, any other comments from Ms. Scallon, Ms. Sabanchek?
No, thank you.
Dr. Kelly? Dr. White?
No, I'm fine.
Okay. So we'll move on down to 8.4, the monthly financial statement for March 2020. 8.5, invoices to be approved for payment. 8.6, payroll warrant register and accounts payable warrant register for March 2020, totaling $27,081,532.17, and bank transfers for March 2020, totaling $25,215,000. 8.7, authorization to appropriate federal impact funds and make a payment in the amount of $11,774 to charter schools. 8.8, proposed school operational support staffing grid and supplement grid, discretionary budget for fiscal year 2020-2021. Mr. Dest?
Yes. I've spoken to the superintendent and various other staff members about the Are we on 8.8? I'm sorry, I was daydreaming.
Yes, sir.
Yes,
We
sir.
are.
Okay.
We are.
I thought we were. About the support grid, and I understand their thought processes behind changing and adding some positions, and that is a necessary thing that we have to do as we go through the years. However, in our present situation and the crisis we face, both operational and financial, I would be hard pressed to support any additional positions that were not revenue neutral. And unless I'm mistaken, we've got some new ones here, and this is not revenue neutral. I fear that we are operating somewhat in a denial process here when we don't recognize the situation that we're in right now financially, both from the state, which is where our money flows from, and on our level. You know, just to give you a little snapshot of what's going on in this state and in this county, you know, the business I'm involved in sends this time of year around $2,000 a day in sales tax to the state of Florida. In the last 30 days, we have sent zero. We are one of tens of thousands of businesses throughout this state are in this same situation. Unfortunately, the state of Florida and this school district are not given the luxury of deficit spending. We have to balance our budgets. You know, and another, you know, the biggest source of the state's income is sales tax. So I can't help but anticipate that the state's going to be in pretty foul shape, and they're the ones that give us our FTE funds. So add that to the fact that we don't really know what's going to happen as we go through this year. CDC says we're going to have another resurgence, they believe, of the viruses this fall and this winter that may well be worse than what we have. If that happens, we are going to have to not be in session again. So, you know, just in the very nature of the crisis that's unprecedented that we're in right now, I would be unable to support any school staffing grid that had new positions that were not revenue neutral. So on that thought, I would ask you to put 8.8 for discussion at Monday's meeting, and we can kick around the details. But, you know, until we get to our budgetary process and find out after the session what kind of money, find out what kind of money we're actually going to get. I'm very, very uneasy spending more money on new positions.
Okay. And so item 8.8, we'll ask to move that to discussion agenda. Okay.
And I'd
Mr.
like to say
Chambers.
just a few things really quickly. And,
Okay.
and first of all, Mr. Destin, I appreciate that. And that's one of the great things I think about this school board is you guys look at all angles, which I appreciate. And I do want to say that I too look at all angles, but I think it's good when you have a group collectively that's looking at something this important. I do want to say, if you remember, probably about a year and about 2 months ago, we also talked about going back to a site-based model. And so over the course of this past year, you know, we created a group that came together and looked at this issue. And the overwhelming majority did not want to go back to a site-based model. They wanted to stay in this model. So we said during these meetings, you know, how can we maybe even create a little bit of flexibility within this new staffing grid? And what kind of came out of that was additional positions that schools needed. And so we didn't, so we shared with them, you know, we don't have the ability right now to go adding a lot of positions. And so we have to be very thoughtful in terms of this staffing grid that's going to come forward. Now, when it came to the staffing grid, in essence, everything moved forward with the exception of an AP position at Baker and looking at band, if there's a threshold of 250 kids, that they would get an additional band instructor. I do want to say, just for the board, just for consideration, when you look at Baker, one of the thought processes is trying to bring them into alignment of the larger schools in the district. And so we looked at that. So Baker's the 5th largest school in the district. They're close to Choctaw in enrollment. I think about 100 students behind Choctaw in enrollment. They have an admin staff that is, in essence, the same as our middle school staff, and some of our middle schools are about 800 students less than what Baker has. Also, when you look at Baker in terms of extracurricular duties, so they have all the high school duties. They also have the middle school duties as well as the elementary duties. So when you look at all of that, they in essence have maybe even more duties than some of our high schools have. To add to that, they have the full scope of testing, 13 grade levels of testing, pre-K through grade 12, but K through 12 in terms of testing, really. And then if you actually looked at the larger high schools in terms of what they have for staffing, they actually also have an additional guidance counselor, some additional office staff, and additional summer hours that we're actually not asking for. So Mr. Martello has been asking for this position for a few years. We did not do it last year. As you know, we cut about $1.3 million last year. But I do clearly understand what you're talking about, Mr. Destin, in terms of where we are. But did think it was appropriate, based on everything that we talked about, to try to bring this forward this year, and definitely look for thoughts.
Okay. So with that being said, Mr. Chambers just made some comments. So Ms. Ivanchek, do you have any comments for Mr. Chambers or Mr. Destin?
Yes, I do. First of all, Mr. Destin, I certainly appreciate what you're saying, and that's very prudent, and we need to look at that. But I also appreciate what Mr. Chambers says. As you know, I am the board member for Baker, and last year I, pushed very hard to get another AP out there, and it could work out, and I certainly understand that. And what he's saying is true. Essentially, they're running an elementary, a middle, and a high school out there on a huge campus. Their numbers have grown over the years and are in alignment with some of our other high schools. And bottom line is they just need, more hands on deck, so to speak. And I appreciate the cost, but I certainly think in this case it's in line to do so. And I appreciate the superintendent and the staff coming up with that, because they really do. They're covering so much out there. If you ever spend a day with them, you better have some running shoes on, because they're all over the place. So if that school were separated out, we would have to pay for separate sets of administrators. So in the long run, I think just adding the one AP, and it is a 10-month, correct, Mr. Chambers?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. So that's a savings too. So that putting it in as a 10-month. So I just want to advocate for this change. I know that times are scary, finances are shaky. We don't know, but what we're hearing out of the state is we're in the state budget is looking good for education. Of course, we don't know the total impact of everything with the pandemic, but I certainly support this going forward, and I appreciate you looking at this with Baker. That's all.
Okay. Dr. Kelly, any comments for Mr. Chambers or Mr. Destin?
I do have a few comments.
Okay.
So first of all, we all acknowledge that there's so many unknowns right now. We can't predict what we might have to face additionally going forward. However, since I am the board's liaison for the arts, I have heard from a couple of our band directors, and one example that I would advocate to keep the required or the requested new allotment for assistant band directors is, for instance, in my zone, Niceville High School, the SAC has been paying for that additional band director for the school. Now they find themselves in a need to use those funds for replacement instruments and other things that the band requires, which are not covered by our periodic allotment for band instrument replacements. That doesn't cover in a band as large as Crestview High School or Niceville High School. So they are in need of those fundings because they're having to supplant or supplement what we're already giving them, and they're in a rotation time now where they need the funds for the position so that they can use the funds they're already raising for themselves on other things. So that's my thought about the band. And certainly, as far as the 10-month AP for Baker, having worked at an AP or worked at a K-12 school, certainly one that's growing, and like Baker, now being the 5th largest school, I can see that for management on a campus like that one, that is so spread out with wings everywhere and students everywhere, just for the sheer management of student movement and discipline, not to mention guidance and other things that are going on, I would support that. And going back to my comment about all the unknowns, appreciating Mr. Destin's comments, I certainly do. We have to balance that with the unknowns that might be helpful for us. For instance, we don't know what summer school might bring us. We might have some savings there. We might have some greater expenditures there. We don't know what summer school might look like, to my knowledge. But those are just thoughts that I have about those two particulars. So I am in support of those two requests for our schools. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Kelly. Dr. White, any comments from Mr. Chambers or Mr. Destin?
Well, just a couple of comments, and then followed maybe by a question. First of all, I understand, and not only am I sympathetic, but I certainly agree with what Mr. Destin had to say about revenue. And I'm very concerned about what the state budget will look like. Now, I do know that the Senate president has indicated that he believes that the reserves of the state will be sufficient to carry us through this situation. Although there are many of us who have been around for some time that kind of wonder about that in terms of the kind of revenue decline that the state has most likely seen. But with all that, I guess that leads me to the question about this particular item. I think I understand very clearly, since this has been moved to discussion, that should this item fail, that pretty much resolves this staffing pattern. However, should this item pass, my question is what does that mean? Does that mean that Baker School will immediately fill this position via advertisement and then interviews and then filling the position? Or does that mean, well, just what exactly does it mean should this item pass?
Okay. So Mr. Chambers will answer your question. Dr. White?
And that is a great question, Dr.
you.
White. So what we would do is we would get into the summer in terms of this 10-month AP position. We would advertise it. It would not take effect until the next school year. So it would fall within the 10-month responsibility. So the start date, in essence, would be, and help me out, Rita, the start date would be in the August timeframe.
Yes. Ms. Scallon is acknowledging it would be in August.
All right. But I think I understand that assuming that we move through the process of advertising and interviewing, it would be incumbent upon the superintendent to eventually bring forth a recommendation of employment for whoever might be selected, should the superintendent choose to bring forth that recommendation. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And so my thoughts are that maybe by that time, and I would assume sometime in July, hopefully, we'll have some idea of what impact all of this will have on our budget for next year. That's all supposition, but that's just kind of what I'm thinking, that this could pass, and subsequently still remain unfilled depending upon the budget.
Dr. White, Ms. Scallon is at the podium right now. She's going to speak in regards to your concerns and questions.
Okay,
Thank you.
typically what would happen is when the school staffing summary grid is approved, then we move forward with that in planning for next year's budget and also in filling those positions. And like everyone has mentioned, there are a lot of unknowns as far as the budget goes for next year. However, what is known is that when the superintendent submits his recommended budget to the school board in July, that budget will be balanced. So in the event there are reductions or adjustments, that will all be factored into the budget when he presents that to you in July. So if there needs to be reductions made somewhere to offset the proposals of these positions, then that will be done, but you will receive a balanced budget in July.
Did you hear that, Dr. White?
Yes, sir, I did,
Okay.
Mr. Bryan. So, from my interpretation of all that is that this can pass, but it still is subject to amendment on those school budgets. Is that correct, Mrs. Scallon?
Well, and I just want to make sure that I'm clear. So what would happen is when this is approved, you move forward, and this is one of the pieces to me building the budget. And in building that budget, when we bring you a budget in July, it'll be balanced, including this position. Now, that's not to say that, at some point through the budget process, I mean, if after you receive the budget, if you wanted to make some adjustments, you can make those adjustments, but that budget will be balanced when you receive it, which includes this position that's being proposed. You will not be in a deficit.
And I would just, excuse me.
Okay. You will not receive a budget that is in a deficit position. Just like every other year, when we build the budget, anything that we add to the budget, and then we take into account what the revenue is that we're receiving, and if there are any increases or expenditures that we're projected to encounter in the new year, all of that is factored into the budget, and then adjustments are made wherever they need to be made. Because sometimes, there's just all kinds of factors, depending on your distribution of staff, depending on whether you have programs or you have software or you have other things that maybe have run the course of their life and you're not going to propose to renew those. So all those ups and downs, in the end, you receive a balanced budget.
And I would add one thing, and Rita, you might even expound on it as well. And let's just say hypothetically we get into the summer and there are some budget shortfalls based on where we are. And I think if there are vacant positions that are out there, and Baker AP being a vacant position, but let's just say there's that and others, then we would have the ability of whether we fill those positions or not based on the fiscal situation.
Correct.
And let me make it quite clear, I have a great deal of affection for Baker. As the board's representative of the construction management people, I have done my best to make sure that we are going forward with all the projects we have up there because they need them.
Yes, sir.
And the arguments that are made in favor of these positions are quite relevant in normal times. We're not in normal times. The question about why we have to put it in now is kind of telling, because as you and Rita both note, this will go into the budget in an attempt to make the budget neutral or balanced, but it's going to be there. Now the reverse is also true. When we get to budgetary actions this summer, we can also put this in as a board. We can add and take positions as we see fit during the budgetary process. So we could put it in then when we know we have the money. By cooking it in now, it's going to be there, and we'll have to take the action to take it out. And what really bothers me most of all about this, and we'll discuss it at more length at the regular meeting on Monday, is what kind of message does this send to the folks we're asking to increase their taxes by ½ cent in the fall, when we are making no attempt to tighten our belt, and in fact are adding physicians? What kind of message does this send to folks who don't have a job, who can't even get on the state's website to apply for unemployment when they go to the ballot to vote? Not a good message in my opinion, but we'll discuss this further at Monday's meeting.
Mr. Chambers.
And I appreciate that statement again, and just remembering this is one portion of the budget. So, and I get that there is an addition, but I definitely wouldn't want anyone thinking that major additions are occurring here. And of course, if even one position is added in terms of getting to a balanced budget, there'll be some decreases in other areas. But just remembering this is one portion of the budget. We still have the departmental budgets, projects, categoricals, all of those things. So I assure you that we will be prudent with the money that we have and make smart and responsible decisions.
And it is one portion of the budget, and the entire budget is made up by little portions. Later in this agenda, we will be asked to allocate another $175,000 to fix the stadium at Choctawhatchee. Altogether, counting the $130,000 we spent in 2018, we're now going to be very close to $500,000. We are also going to do a more extensive inspection of the stadium in Crestview, which is the same vintage. And I fear when we do the kind of inspection that is going to be done, we will find we have some deficits there. So Mr. Chambers is absolutely right. This is one small portion. This entire budget is made up of small portions, and it's our responsibility as a board to look at all of those small portions. So I'll end it on that.
Thank you, Mr. Destin. Okay. So any other comments, starting with Ms. Abanchak?
Yes, thank you. And I can't hear all the comments real clearly, so I'm sorry if I'm saying something that you've already indicated, but two points. I know when the superintendent and his staff puts these pieces for the budget in front of us, along with Ms. Scallon, they have looked at it, and we're basing everything on the monies that we know that we do have. So when they're putting it there, they're not hoping that something's out there, just saying, okay, let's throw this out there. So we know, as far as I understand it, that we are good for this position to have the funds to pay for that. The second thing, Mr. Destin, I always respect your comments, but I guess the way I can justify spending this money is that it's at the classroom. Although it's administrator, it's school-based, and if we were adding something that wasn't at the school site as far as personnel, I would question it. But I think that I can tell you the parents out there have said that they realize that we need some help at Baker. So that's how I can justify it. If it ends up that the budget will let us withstand this expense of adding this 10-month AP, I think that it's well justified. And again, we're making assumptions that of where the monies are now. We have to, because we have to move forward. A lot of things could happen. This thing seems to, be changeable every day, but I think we need to move forward with what we know we have or project that we have and make those decisions. And Dr. White is right. We can approve the position, and if things do get worse, there's nothing says we have to fill it, and it wouldn't be filled till later in the summer anyway. Thank you.
Dr. Kelly?
I appreciate all the hard work that the staff has done to prepare this particular budget, and particularly with respect to the addition of these two positions. And it really is my belief that our staff and our school-based principals do not bring these items to us without a thorough research and background and balancing of what this gives us versus what this costs us. And again, I'll say, I know this is risky. I know we're in uncertain times, and maybe we could add something to this proposal that would give us a fallback, that once Rita and her staff know for sure what our district is being given for the fall, that maybe we could make adjustments at that time. That's just a thought at this moment. But again, I appreciate all the work that staff has done to make sure that we're not going to put ourselves at a disadvantage financially. Thank you.
Dr. White, any follow-up comments or questions?
Well, no, I think my questions have been answered, and I would just say that it appears to me from the superintendent's comments and from the conversations that I've had with various individuals regarding this position, this appears to be an attempt to establish some equity amongst the schools, particularly in the case of Baker being a K-12 school. And I guess along with that, I have always viewed the school district support staffing grid as best guideline should we have the funding to implement that particular staffing grid. Now, I think Mr. Destin's exactly correct. I think that down the road, probably not in too short of an order, we're going to know how we'll be able to staff and fund our schools. And it may be that the staffing grid is a best case recommendation, but it may be something that we're just not able to do. And that's the case with everything in budgets, not just school district budgets, but in all budgets. And so in my mind, this is an attempt to establish some equity, although it might not be something that is ultimately fulfilled. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. White. And as mentioned, item 8.8 will be moved over to discussion on Monday night's meeting. So at that time, staff and school board members, any other questions or comments, you will be prepared to speak regarding this particular item. So with that being said, we'll move down to 8.9. And 8.10, Mr. Wyndham is in attendance in the other room. So school board members, if you have a question or comment about the next two, just let me know and we'll have Mr. Wyndham come on over. So with that, 8.9 is tag on bid over $25,000 for G&A manufacturing. And 8.10 exempted purchase over $25,000 for
I did have a question on 8.9, Chairman.
Okay. If we could have Mr. Wyndham come to the podium, please.
I may be able to answer for you.
Okay.
You may well be able to. My question was whether this includes installation or are we installing these ourselves?
I will get that answer for you. I believe it includes installation, but I will
Okay.
double check and get back to you on that.
Okay.
Sounds
To
good.
make sure I'm
I
saying
can-
it
I
correctly.
can
These
wait
would
for the
be,
answer.
these would be replacements of wooden ramp systems that are in need of replacement.
And they're good. I was just wondering if these included installation.
Yes, sir. I'll double check and get that information back to you.
Thanks.
Okay. All right. Ms. Ivanchek, anything on 8.9, 8.10?
No, thank you.
Dr. Kelly?
No, thank you.
Okay. Dr. White?
No.
Okay. Thank you. So we'll move down to 8.11, the McCarthy Dressman Education Foundation grant for fiscal year 2019-2020. And I believe Ms. Branscombe did call everybody yesterday. Any comments regarding 8.11? Okay. 8.12, Coronavirus Aid Relief and Economic Security CARES Act to Okaloosa Technical College. And 8.13, Community Education Summer Driver Education Program.
I did have a question, Chairman. Are we going to be doing summer school and driver's ed at summer school?
So this is just in the event that we do have it. So if regulations were lessened and it was safe to do so, we have this ready to go. But if not, then we will not.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
All right. So now we'll move down to item 9, which would be Superintendent's Human Resource Recommendation, and Dr. Hale is in attendance if you have any questions. So we'll start with 9.1, Employees on Administrative Leave. 9.2, Deferred Retirement Option Program. 9.3, employment separations. 9.4, personnel recommendations. 9.5, employee suspension. 9.6, reinstatement and reimbursement of sick leave due to line of duty illness, injury, medical examination. And finally, 9.7, leave without pay. Okay. So now we'll move to item 10, which would be the discussion agenda. And item 10.1 is the charter school renewal contract between the School Board of Okaloosa County, Florida, and Liza Jackson Preparatory School Incorporated, presented by Ann Flanagan. And I believe Ms. Flanagan called all school board members yesterday. Any comments or questions regarding this?
And Mr. Chairman, if I might, I wanted just to give the board just a quick highlight through this renewal agreement, if that's okay with you.
Thank you, Mr. McInnes. Yes, sir.
The Liza Jackson School approached the district several months ago requesting an early renewal of their charter. The current charter that they have that does not expire until June of next year. However, they are in the midst of preparing for a large capital project that they want to complete and undertake, and because of the need for funding for that they will be independently obtaining, they needed to know that the charter would be renewed and in place for another term. So that's how this process started. The State Department of Education does provide a template for the renewal charter contract. We are allowed to adjust that and make changes, which we have done here. Highlighting this for you, the renewal charter would become effective July 1 of 2021. It would be a 15-year term, and at the end of that 15 years, there's a provision for month-to-month automatic renewals until it could be renegotiated between the parties. During the course of this new term of the charter, we will do annual evaluations with the school regarding their performance and progress towards meeting their goals and their academic achievements. The school will implement the educational and related programs as they do now. We have a long track record that the board can look at and see the success that Liza Jackson School has had over the years, and so all of that was taken into consideration as these renewal terms were put together. The charter has an extensive section on renewal, non-renewal, and termination. It does have a section on post-termination provisions. All of these changes in this renewal agreement are, if you will, modernizing the current charter contract that we have with Liza Jackson Preparatory School. It was done many years ago. The law has significantly made changes over the years, and this new renewal agreement will put all of those into place. We do have protections for the district in the event there were a termination of the charter, protecting from any assumption of debt and obligations. And there is a restriction, should there be a non-renewal in the future, of spending by the charter until the district could take over. There are requirements under general statutory standards. They cannot discriminate in their educational programs, activities, or employment. And additionally, they do have to comply with all applicable state and federal laws that are required for the charter. There's a section on academic accountability that sets forth annual goals. A section on assessments under academics. Their students will participate in all state assessment programs as required by law, and they will also have the option to participate in any district assessments that are out there as well. All personnel of the charter school will have to follow all state and local standards and laws for test security and administration. The charter school will adopt the district's pupil progression plan when it comes to promotion and graduation and other academic standards. They will also be following the school district's acceptable use policies for students and employees dealing with computers and technology. They will continue under this renewal charter to serve students in grades pre-K through 8. They will have to exercise non-discrimination in their admissions. And this charter does implement an entire school safety section that makes them follow all provisions of the Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School Public Safety Act, and it lays out those requirements. Class size, as applicable to charter schools, is a requirement of this renewal charter. They have an entire section on exceptional student education, dealing with IEPs, providing FAPE, due process, and all of those other elements that are important to the ESE students. There's a section for English for speakers of other languages. They will be following that plan as well. They adopt our school district student code of conduct for student discipline matters, and so they adopt the code of conduct for the grade levels as appropriate in the school district. There's an entire section on financial accountability, and I would say for you that your district staff departments have looked at each section of this renewal contract that was in their area of responsibility, and have made comments and made adjustments and have all signed off on the provisions here that were in their areas. There is a restriction under this renewal, as is law, that they cannot charge tuition or fees except for those fees that are allowed by Florida law and that are normally charged to other public school students in our district. They will do an annual budget. They will do annual financial reporting. Ms. Scallon has been through and reviewed all of that. There is a section on financial management of the school that does provide protections to the district as sponsor, assuring that the district is not guaranteeing payment for any purchases made by the school, not guaranteeing payment for any debts incurred by the school, not guaranteeing any loans taken out by the school, and is not lending its full faith and credit for the school in order to obtain loans or other forms of credit. The school does not have the authority or legal ability to levy any taxes or issue bonds. There's a section dealing with facilities, transportation, food service, an extensive section on insurance and indemnification. There's a section on governance for the school that implements all of the changes in Florida law about the board for the charter school and its governance. We deal with human resources, and that includes a requirement that just like the school district does, they have a background screening process in place for everybody that they hire. And so, Mr. Chairman, that's kind of an overview of what's in this renewal. I think it's a very good document for this group going forward. We've had a good working relationship with them in developing this document, and they have signed off on it and are asking that it be approved.
Okay. So with that being said, I'll start with Mr. Destin. Any comments?
No, I intend to support this. They have done a good job, and as Mr. McGinnis has pointed out, it appears they've gone above and beyond the absolute bare bones requirements that the state puts on them to agree to other safeguards and details that we think are important. So I applaud their working with us.
Right. Ms. Ivanchek, any comments?
Yeah, I'm just glad that we have had such a great relationship with Liza Jackson over the years, and I think it's a model of how the public school system and a charter school can work well together. Thank you.
Okay. Dr. Kelly?
None, thank you.
Okay. Dr. White?
No remarks, Mr. Ryan.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so now we'll go to item 10.2, and we know that item 8.8 will be moved over to discussion. So now we're to 11, construction program owners representative business, and Mr. Destin, we'll let you give us an update.
Yep, thank you, Chairman. We provided the agenda from the last construction meeting we had, and as you see, we have two items on today's workshop agenda. The first being Kenwood Elementary. The roof is to the point that it has to be fixed. So that one's been added in. We're going to get a pre-GMP. And the other one is the one that I referred to earlier, that we're having to add $175,000 to the money that we're spending to fix the Choctawhatchee High School Stadium. And our construction management people feel that will be sufficient. I think there's even a small little cushion above what they thought it would cost. But as I said, counting the money we spent in 2018, we're up to around $500,000. But I think it's going to be fixed for a very long period at this point. But we are asking that be approved so they can go forward with the finishing that job.
All right. So with that, we'll go to 11.2, TPM program number 6, task order number 8, pre-GMP Kenwood Elementary kitchen dining room replacement. And item 11.3, program number 6, task order number 5, time and materials, task order emergency remedial efforts, both design and construction for repairs to Joe Etheridge Stadium at Choctawhatchee High School. Any questions or comments, starting with Ms. Abanchek, on either of these two items?
No, thank you. I got with Dr. Smith, and I'm fine with that. Thank you.
Okay. Dr. Kelly?
None, except I am grateful, again, to district staff who've done the work and who continue to take care of our buildings no matter what state they're in, particularly some of our older buildings and some of the structural things that need to be replaced. So just thank you.
And Dr. White?
No remarks. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, sir. Okay, so now we'll move to item 12. There is nothing on information technology seat management contract. And item 13, Mr. McInnes, your business.
No report today.
Okay, item 14, superintendent business, Mr. Chambers.
Yes, I appreciate it. 1 sec. So I did want to give you all a little bit of information on a few different items. So I do want to go back to graduation. I want to share with you kind of what we've done the last the last number of, especially this past week. So first of all, I've had 2 different working sessions with our principals, as well as just several conversations with them. We've all stated that we will have a graduation, but what will that graduation look like? Today, a survey will be going out to all of our senior parents and to all of our senior students, so they'll be able to give some input. We have a survey that gives them different areas where they can rank order. So for example, might we have, if we're able to do so, might we have a modified graduation in June or July where kids are social distanced, they might be 8 feet apart just like they did at the Air Force Academy, and families might get X number of tickets to come in if we were able to do so. Also looking at if we were to do a virtual graduation, that's an option to where there would be a the principal would be recorded, the valedictorians would be recorded, the national anthem, the pledge would be recorded. Kids would come up to the school in a safe manner as long as that's able to be done. Kids would shake the hands of the principal on stage or in the auditorium. All of that would be put together in a production similar to what some of you may have seen on social media, and that would be professionally done. And then there's another option out there that potentially we have a miniature virtual graduation, and then kids come back at a later date to really do a graduation the right way, so to speak. So we're trying to give input to our seniors and to the parents, but as well as the input of our principals and staff, and come up with a graduation that makes sense, but a graduation that honors all the hard work and effort these students and families have put forth over their educational experience. So that survey goes out today. We've asked for it to be completed by April 27th. So once we get that information, coupled with whatever the guidance is from the governor after May 1st, we'll be able to really make a more informed decision in terms of what will graduation look like. We do have some proposed dates that we will be prepared to put out after this survey for June, and some proposed dates for July as well, because we'll need to get those on the books for families to be prepared for. Very, very appreciative of the work of our principals in communication with their parents. Very appreciative of the parents and students who've reached out. What is very clear is everyone wants a graduation. I think what is very clear, the ideal piece, is that it's at their school that they work so hard at, want to deliver that, but it's going to be dependent on where we are in this country. One of the thoughts that's been put out there is, do we come back in the fall as well? And none of us have a crystal ball, and I'm not I'm not an expert on coronavirus, but what I have heard is about, the second wave. The only piece that makes me a little nervous is if we did it in the fall and there was a second wave, then that could push a graduation back to, the second semester of 2021. So that would be very difficult. I say all that to say that a lot of thought is going into this, and we want to get the input of our parents and students as well. So I have some other things to talk about as well, but I wanted to pause if there's anything that the board has in terms of this graduation discussion.
Okay. Yes, Mr. Destin.
Quite a dilemma, Mr. Chambers. For fear of trying to put it off and then running into a second wave of this, I would say if we can do it in some manner that's satisfactory to the parents and the children in a virtual manner, most likely where we need to go with it.
Ms. Ivanchek?
No questions or comments. Thank you.
Okay. Dr. Kelly?
No, not at this time. Thank
Okay.
you.
Dr. White?
No comment right now. Thank you.
And my only comment would be that I know I appreciate the fact that you're reaching out not just to the principals, but you're reaching out to the parents, the students, the community, because several communities are already trying to take measures to honor the graduates. So I know I appreciate that, and I would just encourage people parents to answer that survey, because we would like to hear your input. But I also would like to ask, how is that survey going to be sent out again? Is it going to be sent out is it going to be a physical letter? Is it going to be on social media?
So principals will be directing the families and students to the parent portal. So on the parent portal, they'll be able to click there. We've asked that they designate that they're a student or they're a parent, and it will cut off at 2 responses. So we just want to be sure that each family gets the parent and the student response.
Okay. All right. Continue on, Mr.
All right.
Chambers.
So I want to just give some other information just for the board, just so you know, because I know you all get questions as well. As it pertains to school feeding, I think you know that our food service workers have done a remarkable job. But not only our food service workers, but our bus drivers as well. As you know, we're driving 2 bus stops and delivering food. I think even as of yesterday, I think 1 or 2 more sites for bus stops were added again. But we've served over 113,000 meals. I think that's pretty amazing when you think about the magnitude of that. We will continue this feeding through the remainder of this school year. And then, as you know, as a board, we also have a summer feeding program, so families will still be able to receive food during that time. Wanted to shift to just give you a little bit of information, and then Mr. Hort, I want you to talk about these app launches. But online instruction, as you know, the internet access was the key piece to this, and I appreciate Mr. Hort and his department to have the forethought of making sure that we had hotspots, and that didn't happen everywhere. So their thinking ahead was a big deal to make sure our families had these hotspots so online education could occur if they didn't have internet access. I've said the whole time that all of this has not been perfect, but it's gotten better by the day, which I think is a good thing. Mr. Horton, if you would share about the app launches, and especially as it pertained to maybe a year ago, how many app launches that we had the entire year, and then how many app launches we had in 4 days, and then where we are today.
Yes, sir. Thanks, Mr. Chambers and board members. And before I do that, just an update that the 8.9 item on the ramp replacement does include installation as well. It's in those quotes. Thank you. So as we've transitioned all these folks to online learning, obviously we've got 29,000, 30,000 students in the district, and Mr. Chambers reported the other day that the vast majority are in and working, and some are working at different paces. But we've seen, because we can go in and look at students who have or have not begun work in their OdysseyWare learning platform or their Edgenuity platform, and identify, and then schools are doing a great job of reaching out to those families if the students, for whatever reason, haven't begun working. But the work rate is over 96% at the elementary level, and 97 or 98% at the secondary level when you go in and look and see students that have been active in those programs. So that's a good sign. It means that folks are accessing and that parents are doing a great job and that the teachers are doing a great job communicating. So that's happening, and I know the superintendent is very pleased with the number of folks that are working. And I will say, just as another aside, we just got a text from our principal yesterday. There are folks that are trying to go the extra mile every day to help folks. My IT director, you know him well, he spent some time at a house yesterday helping a grandmother and a student that were having difficulties accessing their coursework and making some sense of it. So we're trying to do everything we can to keep people involved, and I think it's going well. The app launches is something else we can track. So anytime a student clicks on their OdysseyWare or clicks on an iReady app inside of our ClassLink system, we can track it. And so we are at this point, and I haven't checked in the last couple of days, probably at about 3 million student app launches to access their resources. 3 million. And so the first year we had ClassLink, through the entire school year, I think we had 3 million for the entire year. So we're in 3 weeks of online learning, and obviously the numbers are larger, but it's been amazing. And so the technology has worked by and large, and we've got weather coming through today, so obviously sometimes that causes issues, and then our help desk call volume comes up. But 3 million app launches means that kids are working. And so it's not necessarily the same as being in class and face-to-face, but I think everyone's doing a great job given the situation.
Well, Mr. Horton, I would just comment that you mentioned a certain IT director. We know who that is, but for the public, let that be known who that person was.
That was Eric Mitchell.
Okay.
And he wears a lot of hats, and he does a really good job. And he'll hate me for this, but he's got a big heart, and so he doesn't like it when there's somebody out there that needs some help and isn't able to get it. So he'll get in the car and go find him if he needs to.
Thank you.
He does a great job.
Okay. Hold that. Mr. Destin, any comments?
Well, they're doing a great job.
Okay. Ms. Ivanchek, any comments for Mr. Horton?
No, just thank you very much for everything you and the others are doing.
Dr. Kelly?
No, we discussed it by phone yesterday. Just thank you.
Okay, thank you. Dr. White?
No, thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Horton. Okay, Mr.
All right.
Chambers.
I still have a few more items, so bear with me.
You're good.
But I do want to say, just on this, so that the MIS department, as you know, is critical to this whole online model that we're doing. And prior to March 30th, it was probably 2.5 weeks before that Mr. Horton and his group started looking at, if we have to go to an online model, what do we need to do? And because of the work that they did, we were very much prepared. But the troubleshooting that this group has done, the amount of hours that this group has done, when we send parent emails out, because we get new information at 6 o'clock at night or 8 o'clock at night or the weekend, we had individuals going back to Carver Hill to make sure that they could send out the email, and I think now they have the ability to do it remotely. So just appreciative of all of our departments, all of our schools and staff, but specifically right now to the MIS department, just fantastic. These are some questions that you all may be receiving as well. So, when can I go get items out of my locker? What about something that I had in my classroom? Or when we're done with our devices, can we turn them in, turning in textbooks, library books, and so forth? So I just want the board to know that after May 1st, we'll know a little bit more in terms of where we are, in our returning to normalcy, so to speak. So we'll see what that looks like. But once we get that guidance, and let's just say that we're able to, the schools will work with their families. They'll set up processes similar to what we did with the device distribution, where it was a very organized process. We will have an organized process in terms of devices coming back, in terms of textbooks, library books coming back, and the ability for families to retrieve things from lockers or materials that they have. So more will come after May 1st, and we see exactly what has been lifted. You all also might be receiving some questions about sports eligibility. I know I've received a lot of them about, can my child have another year, especially at the high school level, can I have another year of sports eligibility? 2 days ago, the High School Association came out and said the answer is no, you cannot have another year of sports eligibility. So they've answered that for us. Summer activities and fall tryouts, I get a lot of these questions, so I would guess that you all do as well, as it pertains to the summer and as it pertains to the fall tryouts. Now, what I have said is, we anticipate having fall sports and fall activities, but we're still under the, we have to follow whatever the guidance is, at that time. So the same thing with summer activities. So if it is safe to do so, we would, but I would surmise that summer activities will probably look a little different this year than maybe in the past. One of the things that I'm very sensitive to as it pertains specifically to football and specifically to cross country, those two sports, for example, they normally start early in the summer, and they start early in the summer to make sure that they get acclimated to the heat and that they get conditioned. So I know those two sports especially will need some lead time in order to be prepared for the start of the season. So that's just a little bit of information what I share when families ask me about this, but I just wanted to give you just that information as well. And then the last thing that I get is registering students. So as you know, kindergarten registration is a big deal for us. That's the one grade level where you kind of have to really look at past data to get a true indication of what that enrollment will look like. And then, of course, we're in a military area, so we have a lot of families that move in. So Mr. Horton and his staff will have ready in May an online registration form. So families will not have to just come to the school. We may be able to do that, who knows, but we want to make sure that we have an online registration process that families can fill out to get everything done, and the schools get that information as well. So that's just my report right now to give you some information.
Mr. Dess?
No question.
Okay. Okay, any other questions or comments for Mr. Chambers, starting with Ms. Ivanchak?
No, thank you.
Dr. Kelly?
None, thank you.
Okay, and Dr. White?
Well, yes, sir, and just to say how much I know that the board and everyone else appreciates all the efforts that the superintendent, his staff, and all of our faculties in the schools and everyone else are doing. I would just say, and Superintendent, you and I have spoken about this, that registration is really, really important because, as I remember, all that feeds into our projections of enrollment, and we all know how important that is in terms of preparing our budget and how we're going to conduct business next year. So thanks for putting all that together, and hopefully that'll give us a pretty good picture of what we're looking at in terms of our enrollment.
Go ahead, Mr. Chambers.
And I appreciate that, Dr. White. And one of the things that, and Dr. White had a really good conversation, and one of the things that we would definitely want to do is be as certain as we can about the current registrations that we have, as well as future registrations. And one of the things that Mr. Horton has already started, doing it safely, is talking with each of the schools. So if you would come up, Mr. Horton, just kind of give the board an understanding of what you are doing and how that plays into the, in essence, also into the budget process.
Yes, sir. Thanks, Mr. Chambers. So what we're doing right now is I'm having individual conversations with the school principals over the last 2 weeks, looking at instructional allocations for next year. And luckily, we had completed almost all of our registration of existing students at the middle and high school levels, so we know what courses they've selected. We can see the numbers that are there. We're tracking the admitted number of students for each school right now and actual enrollment, and not noticing a significant drop-off at this point in time. So we're moving forward with, we'll make some instructional allocations to finance that ends up coming back around as the school budgeting packets, but it helps them to determine how many teachers they need to hire, and those sorts of things. The second piece about registration, obviously, is the kindergarten registration, which typically is occurring now and all throughout the summer and into the first weeks of school, and new student registration. So we've been working with our principals on that and are developing an online registration portal that we hope will make it easier for parents as we move into the summer, if we're still in a situation where they're not coming to the school site, where they can enter the information and get registered for school. And we'll promote that widely when it's available. But we have had parents calling and asking about registering their kindergartner at this time. And so, in some cases, they'll email a packet back and forth, but we want to make it simple for families to understand. And in those areas where a parent may not have access to the internet, no concerns there. We'll work with those families again. Once we put that out, we'll have staff on campus to be able to take calls and help folks get registered. But we certainly want to do that.
All right. And,
No comments.
okay. All right, so any other comments for Mr. Horton, starting with Ms. Ivanchek?
No, thank you.
Okay, Dr. Kelly?
None, thank you.
Okay, Dr. White?
No, but I suspect that we'll be talking about this probably some more in the future. Thank you.
Yes, sir. And I would just like to say thank you to Mr. Chambers, because I did also talk with him and, with these concerns, and I appreciate you clarifying a lot of that today. I also know you put a video out the other day to help answer a lot of those questions that we're receiving. So I would thank you and all of your staff for what you're doing to get that communication piece out there. Okay, so we'll go down to board members' announcements and requests for information, starting with the Honorable Mr. Dewey Destin.
Thank you, Chairman. I want to thank and congratulate the staff on the implementation of the online education. They've done a good job, and it was something that had to be done. I am curious, though, and I will request that Rita give us a summary of what we've spent so far to implement this, and to implement other emergency actions we've had to take, so that we can get our arms around what it's cost and where it came from in the budget, and what adjustments will have to be made, because when you take something out of one side of a budget, it shifts things around. So if Rita could at least give us a summary by Monday, that would be very helpful as we go forward.
Okay. All right. Anything else?
And that's all I have. Thank you.
And Ms. Ivanchek, we'll start with you.
Well, yes, I think what we've heard today is that our employees and everyone in our school district they're all working very hard. I've mentioned this before, but when I get into these conference calls with members of other boards throughout the state, I always come to the end of that saying, thank goodness we're in Okaloosa County, and that's directly because of the professional individuals and caring individuals we have working in our school district. I've been able to see through social media a lot of the very creative things that our teachers are doing to keep these students engaged and to help parents who, I'm sure many of them came in with so much anxiety going to the online education. It's just amazing. Everything from the parades to putting yard signs in the students' yards, and so many things to keep those relationships and personal things going. And just want to thank everyone for doing beyond their part and making this so successful. I say it all the time, kind of cliche, we didn't get a playbook. No one did, to how to handle this situation, and we're certainly having to take it a day at a time, but I'm very proud to be in Okaloosa County. Thank you.
Dr. Kelly.
Yes, just a couple of things. First of all, it is true, and certainly our school district is the epitome of this next statement, and that is that in times of chaos, true heroes emerge. And I think we've seen that at all levels, on all campuses throughout our school district, that our teachers and our district staff have really stepped forward. And you've heard me say before, they've accomplished really heroic deeds by putting a whole system online and supporting it and doing it within just a matter of weeks, which I think is truly remarkable. And secondly, yesterday we did celebrate National Professional Assistance Day, and so to that I would like to congratulate and thank you, our two that help the school board members in any number of ways, Ms. Jan Crawford and Ms. Mary McGowan. Thank you both, ladies. I appreciate you. And that's all I have today. Thank you.
Okay. Dr. White.
No, sir, nothing further. Thank you.
Okay. And my comment would be a couple comments that I have, and I will echo Ms. Vanchek's praise for the Florida School Board Association. I, too, get information from them. I don't get in on all of the live conferences, but I do go back and watch them. And I will tell you that Andrea Messina, who's the FSBA director, has done a phenomenal job of getting information to all of us school board members throughout the state. I would just praise them for everything, and I too sit through those conference calls or listen to them and think that we are very blessed here in Okaloosa County to be able to have just a great working relationship with our schools, our staff, our superintendent. So again, thank you to the Florida School Board Association. I would also like to do a shout out for Crestview High School senior Ariel Jagelski. She sent us an email the other day, sent me and Mr. Chambers an email the other day, relaying her plans, her ideas for seeing a graduation at Crestview High School and throughout the county. But I did just want to take a moment to recognize Ariel for taking the time to send us her thoughts. And so thank you to Ariel. And, overall, just again, thank you to Mr. Chambers and his staff and all of our schools, everybody from that's just out there doing an amazing job and, trying to bring some type of normalcy to not a normal world right now. But again, thank you to everybody that's out there working hard day in and day out. So now we'll move down to item 16. That will be public comment. And we do have a public hearing, 17.1, public hearing for approval for the charter school renewal contract between the School Board of Okaloosa County, Florida, and Liza Jackson Preparatory School Incorporated. So, Rita, anything that you'd like to add? Steve? Okay, and this meeting is adjourned.